It's been a long, long climb for Graham. He's 29 now, a pro for 10 years. But at last, the world title chance is here. The one remaining obstacle, Mike McCallum, the tall Jamaican on the right, beating Kenny Beattie of Northern Ireland for a Commonwealth Games gold medal. It happened in Canada in 1978.
Michael McCallum of Jamaica, unanimous decision, takes the gold medal at welter.
Graham didn't go to those games, although in this 1978 ABA final, he's beating the favourite, Delroy Parks of the RAF. The selectors sent the beaten Parks instead. It was the first of many frustrations for Herol.
Graham in the blue corner.
Graham has done it. The young bomber has exploded, one of the surprises of the night. But at 18, Herol Graham adds the ABA senior title to all those junior titles.
5 years later, Graham was making his mark as a pro. He was already light middleweight champion of Britain and the Commonwealth and about to win the European title with this devastating second-round knockout of Clement Schinzer. One promoter predicted he'd be world champion in a year, but Graham was putting on weight. He moved up to middle and started again. For a fighter, often accused of being poor box office, Graham can at times look sensational, as America's Irving Hines discovered in 1984. Graham's career was lifting off, and so was his Belgian opponent, Jose Saiz, that same year. It was just one of several unpleasant things that happened to Saiz that night. Graham's mentor in Sheffield was the knowledgeable Brendan Ingle, but not everyone believed in Herol in those days. He'd had more than 20 wins before anyone asked him to fight in London. But in 1985, as the new British middleweight champion, he came south to the Royal Albert Hall and went about his business efficiently against the Argentine champion, Roberto Ruiz.
There's no way Ruiz is going to go the distance. He's putting on years. As you look at him, he's beginning to look an old man. And he doesn't know where to go or what to do, and his eye's cut as well now. Ruiz, his left eye is cut. And he's got terrible problems here. There's no way he's going to get through this fight.
Graham was now signed up with Barney Eastwood, the Belfast manager who took Barry McGuigan to a world title. The partnership was set for storms. However, in 1986 in Sheffield, Graham put on one of his great performances, taking the European title from a former world champion, Ayub Kalula.
Graham again putting together good punches, keeping it under control neatly. Masterly bit of boxing. Oh, he's got him going. This might be the end of Kalula's reign. Round 10. I think it's all over. It is all over. And Graham is the champion. And the whole of Sheffield celebrate.
A few months later, he put the title on the line against London's favourite middleweight, Mark Taylor of Wembley. Between them, they produced a minor classic. Graham, the man on the way up, and Taylor, the ex-champion, trying to stay with him.
Taylor's still coming back at him. The going is getting harder and harder for the challenger. And this time Taylor goes in and hangs on, and he's very, very tired. Graham's bleeding from the nose. Both men now tired. Very tired. And we're only in the 8th. 4 to go after this. Graham beginning to look a bit weary himself, as though he's almost worn himself out, punching Taylor. Taylor hangs on now, looks desperately tired. And they're both glad to break it off at the end of that tremendous 8th round. And Graham came out on top of it. And it does seem to me now that the battle is surely swinging his way. John Coyle has been called over, and they've pulled Taylor out of the fight. They've pulled Taylor out at the end of the 8th round.
Graham was now the leading contender for Marvin Hagler's world title, but Hagler refused to defend against him, and the WBA stripped Hagler of their title. But Graham refused to be pessimistic.
Definitely on the World Championship. I'd rather go for the World Championship than anything, really and truly.
Then in 1987, Graham staked his title and his record against Sambu Kalambe, the Italian champion.
Oh, he's got Graham with a right. The right that always threatened
has found him at the finish. Can you believe it? He's almost out on his feet. He's getting his gloves up to convince the referee he's okay, and now he's got to run for cover, and he's pushed Callum Bay to the floor. No punch. And Graham now has to try to survive. Cut over the right eye, badly hurt by the right hand. And the man in front of him is going for the finish, and he might just get it. The whole of Graham's world suddenly explodes. Just over half a minute to go. Can Graham survive? The boxing wits are coming back. But one more right hand, like he's already taken, might be the finish. Hanging on for dear life, Graham. The hardest fight he's ever had. The bell coming up. 10 seconds to go. And Graham tries to get back into it as the bell goes. And the question is, has he done enough to keep the title?
Callum Bay, 116 points, Graham 113. The winner,
the biggest margin, 3 points by the final judge. And Callum Bay is the new European middleweight champion. And Graham has lost the first fight of his professional career after 38 successive wins in 8.5 years. Suddenly, the 100% record is destroyed, but much, much more important than that, his title has gone, and with it has gone his chance to fight for the World Championship. He fought on, and now, 2 years later, the big chance has come at last, and no one can say Herol Graham doesn't deserve it. In Sheffield, Northern reporter Harry Graham has struck up a special relationship with Graham and trainer Brendan Ingle. He picks up the story.
5 years ago, Brendan Ingle told me that Herol Graham would be champion of the world. There have been times when we all wondered if he'd even get the chance to be.
I knew it would happen. It's just a matter of time. I'm just being patient. We had a little hiccup, but we knew we'd come through it.
That little hiccup was a guy called Callum Bay. Now, that did set you back a bit.
Yeah, it set me back about a year. But within that year, I've grown in stature, I've grown in maturity. Everything what happened then is all behind me. I was able to put behind me and just get on my feet and move on to something better.
But if Callum Bay halted Herol's career, he also did the same to Mike McCallum. At his news conference today, though, he looked relaxed. But memories of that defeat are still fresh. He gave up his light middleweight crown for the fight, and he admits now to his mistakes.
Well, I made one of the biggest mistakes in my life, I think, and not to take anything away from Callum Bay. Callum Bay is a great champion, was a great champion, and a very good fighter. But I think I went over there like 5 days before the fight, which was crazy. And I didn't feel good. I felt weak, like jet lag still. And he fought a great fight.
The careers and styles of both fighters are remarkably similar. Both lost on points to Callum Bay, ruining perfect records. But how does McCallum rate Graham?
Well, he's a good boxer, technical boxer. I think that's his best asset towards the fight. Seems like he moves a lot. Seems like he likes to run a lot.
Herol is difficult to hit. This is his party trick. In the local pubs, he does this for charity at £5 a time. No one has hit him yet.
I've always said to people for the last 10 years, they've got to have, the opponent, it was McCallum's got to be able to hit Herol. Whether he can hit him or not's another thing. Herol and myself, we've been working in the gym, we've been working for 10 years for this opportunity. It's going to be a great tactical fight, which I'm going to get great pleasure out of being involved in it and watching it. And I've no doubt Herol's going to win. It's going to be hard, but not hard that Herol's going to get hit. It's going to be the mental pressure of the dummies, defence, the tricky parts of boxing, the technical parts of boxing. Herol's up against a fella that was like middleweight champion, undefeated, lost one fight, and he had 7 successful title defences. But I've no doubt what Errol's going to do and what he's been working on, that he's going to win.
The last time I saw Herol looking as sharp as this was 3 years ago for the Lindell-Holmes fight. Brendan's confidence then went to ridiculous extremes.
Well, we borrowed 20,000 quid on their house to put the fight on, and it rained all that week before, and on the Wednesday the skies opened up and the sun came out. The Thursday, and the tickets were just going steady. So Errol and myself went down Sheffield. The recreation department loans are loud hailer. Errol went shadowboxing uptown. A fellow called Peter Markey off the Star helped us with some publicity, and the whole lot went terrific. On the day of the fight, the skies were clear blue, the sun shone, and the place was packed out. So we had a great house, and Errol boxed Lindell-Holmes, one of the leading contenders for the middleweight title, and stopped them in 3 rounds. So everything come off.
But if that was one of Herol's career highs, the last few months must have been his worst. The row with manager Barney Eastwood threatened to cost him all he'd worked for. Getting the two together wasn't easy. Now, at least on the surface, it has happened.
It's patched up to a certain degree, yeah, you could say that. We're talking, which is the main point. He's doing the business, going the fight, and I'm doing the fighting, which is my business. So we're keeping it like that. We do talk, and we're getting on in as manager to boxer.
Well, these things happen, and I was very sad at the time, and I'm still very sad about the whole thing. It was just unnecessary. It could have been avoided. However, I've never taken my eye off the main target, which was to get him the World Championship. I've got it for him. And, you know, it's one thing fighting for a world title, but it's another thing winning it. And I think it's within his power and within his grasp to win this. And he's getting the opportunity in England, if not in Sheffield. And I hope he really takes this opportunity to grab it with both hands.
Looking at you both today, the rift seems to be healed almost completely now.
Yeah, well, I'm a professional in what I do, and I hope I am anyway. And what's happened now, that's behind us, and let's go on and try and win the world title. That would be my dearest wish.
How good a fighter do you think Herol Graham is, and perhaps potentially is?
Well, on his night on, mentally and physically well, you know, he has the capabilities of beating anyone in the world. And, you know, this fight must mean so much to him, because if he can win this, he can go on to defend it a couple of times, and I could see him finishing up with an amalgamation of the titles with Michael Nunn, maybe in America, maybe in 2 years' time, which would be a mega dollar fight.
That kind of talk is a far cry from Sheffield, Herol's adopted city, and one which he has resolutely refused to leave. Some argue that his determination to stay in the Steel City has cost him dearly. But if the north-south divide exists in boxing, Herol believes that his route for the championship is a genuine one and an indication of how good a fighter he is.
For the reason of not being in London, I probably have had about five chances at a World Championship fight, or I probably have had a chance when I'd won about 27 of my fights, something like that. But I've been with the hard guys, I've been with everybody, nothing hand-picked. I've had to fight everybody and anybody, and I've done it the hard way, so I'm not complaining about that, and no one can really say, oh, Herol has had hand-picked opponents, and I know a few people who've had hand-picked opponents, and they've gone on to win championship, and or box or world championship and lost. But when I get in the ring, I can say I've got a good pedigree. I've been with everybody, and then I'm going to win a championship as well.
Herol, by his own admission, doesn't like training. He loves his cream cakes too much. But the only icing he's even thought about in the last few months is on the World Championship cake he'll treat himself to next Wednesday, after he's the champion.
Live coverage of Herol Graham against Mike McCallum in Sports Night next week.